Well, guys, we've done it. That's it. This is the last session of the day of day three of 2025 TechCon. It's been a pleasure to be the host of the TBM track. So if you've heard by now, if you have any questions that come up, please put them in chat and we'll relay them on. It's been fun so far, last session of the day, and this is going to be beyond hours, the science of dual capacity measurement. And for now, I'm going to hand it over to Maxim with C Prime.
Thanks, Steve. Hello, everyone. My name is Max Danilevsky. I am the managing director here. I oversee all of the solution architecture as well as all the deliveries for Aptio target process here at C Prime. And I am excited to spend the next 60 or so minutes talking about dual capacity measurement. Before I get into that, I kind of want to lay out the groundwork of where this sort of fits in. When we talk about capacity management, when we talk about things like target process, it's not just a single point in time view. We need to understand how it fits into the enterprise architecture and enterprise landscape for different companies. So we believe that there's 6 key strategic considerations shown here on this slide that are involved in any enterprise. First, you have your customer and market demand. People have needs, they have wants, they have problems that either need to be solved or there's some sort of value that needs to be extracted for any company in any industry. And so the executives, the really smart folks at different companies need to come together in terms of strategic portfolio management and start forming up different strategies of how to capture and extract a lot of that customer and market demand. We need to be able to understand what customer value is out there, as well as what enterprise value there is within the ecosystem. And as they're forming the strategy to be able to extract a lot of this value from the market, work needs to be done, stuff needs to happen, applications need to be built, services need to be provided, products need to be built, whether digital or real-time physical, that are connected to that strategy, right? If we form a strategy, work needs to happen in order to do that. Then we have people, right? It's great that we have all this work and it's great that we have all this strategy, but we need people in order to be able to accomplish that work. And this is where that optimized workforce really comes in, being able to understand what are the skill sets of the different people that we have within our company, within our enterprise, to be able to do that work and accomplish that, whether it be enterprise architecture, development, business, IT, finance, some internal functions, HR, legal, and so on and so forth. That's where that optimized workforce comes in. And it's not a point in time view here either. We need to also be able to take a look ahead of time and sort of start prepping, be able to understand who we have, what they're working on today, hopefully in a very optimized way, but then be able to understand if I need 50 AI developers or 50 quantum developers because of an initiative that I have coming in 5 years from now, and today I only have 2, that's when I need to start making some sort of decisions to continue to optimize that workforce. And this workforce can't just work however they want and need. We need to be able to understand the enterprise operating model here with some governance and controls. We don't want people going home in orange suits. And so being able to set up governance frameworks in such a way that there's at least some sort of standardization so that we can view holistically across the enterprise what is going on, what is being worked on, how can we start to compare apples to apples conversations, and what are the controls necessary, whether those are internal controls, external controls, federal controls, government controls, based on the business that we have. Enterprise architecture management is going to be a key piece that plays into the holistic enterprise landscape as well, to be able to understand what are our enterprise business capabilities, the things that make our business what it is, how that is connected to the strategy that's set forth by the executives to extract that customer market demand, as well as the work that's being done by our optimized workforce, all working in tandem so that they're all saying the same thing, they're all telling the same story. If we are working on a piece of growth item and the focus of the company is growth, are we actually putting in work? Are we putting in an investment in terms of labor and software in order infrastructure in order to actually grow that business capability, to grow that part of the business? Or are we really spending a lot of time in maintenance mode? And everything that sort of holds together is all about strategic funding and finance. We need to be able to understand what are those costs, how much labor workforce we're actually investing, whether it's within IT, whether it's in business, what are the infrastructure costs. Really start to get a total cost of ownership view, and not just the expense perspective of it, but also the revenue perspective of it. I mean, we can squeeze that the blood, sweat, and tears out of the expense rock as much as we can. Um, if we have zero expense, then we don't have a business. So we get actually diminishing returns as we're lowering the expense costs. So we need to be able to then flip the script and say, all right, are our investments that we're providing actually increasing the top line of the revenue curve? All of this kind of put together is what kind of makes an enterprise tick in our eyes. And what we're talking about capacity management, when we're talking about what are people doing, where are they spending their time, how can I start to operate some of those things, and be able to view a lot of these things of our workforce. That's where we're focused on, right? Is this bottom left corner here of our optimized workforce, really starting to talk about resource planning here. So what is capacity? Actually, as we go through any sort of either target process or implementation, or we talk to our customers, we talk to different areas of the business, I hear the word capacity used quite frequently to mean different things. And I have actually two definitions for capacity here in terms of both hours and story points, but actually more recently, I've also started to hear the word and the term capacity be used more for finance, right? When I say how much capacity do I have to work on this initiative, some folks also talk about the financial aspect. How much is this initiative going to cost from a labor perspective? It is really important when we do talk about capacity to actually say which unit we're using. Are we talking about hours? When people are actually measuring some sort of time, we're tracking the availability of a person, we're tracking how much time a person spends on a project, on an initiative, how much time they spend on a team, how much availability they have. I mean, typically we have 40-hour work weeks in the US. Most folks start to use the 32 hours in terms of actual working time, depending on the meetings and overhead and whatnot, sickness out of office, those things. We also start to use hours to track estimates and to track actual time spent on a task itself. So being able to understand a maybe user story or a project task and say, I think this is going to take 2 developers 5 hours each in order to be able to do that. That example there is still considered capacity, right? What is the capacity measurement to be able to do that work? Then we also talk about capacity in terms of story points for those that are going through any kind of agile transformation or are already deeply entrenched in agile ways of working. Story points is becoming is a prevalent way of measuring how much work is getting done. Really, this is a throughput of either a team. Some folks use a throughput of an actual person. How many story points can a person do? How many story points can a team of teams or an agile release train or a squad or a town can actually get through that? And it's not just an estimate on a user story, or it's not just an estimate on a piece of work, but we can actually use it to track actuals. And even those story points themselves don't have units of measure, right? It's not like hours. I mean, it could be bananas, it could be apples, it could be pebbles, what have you. We can still use that to say a team can go through 100 story points within a week or 100 story points within a 2-week window. So when we're talking about capacity, right, there's this dual measurement that's sort of going on all at the same time. And for the executives and the folks that we talk to, whether they're in the PMO, whether they're in the Agile COE, this term of capacity is used interchangeably, and it really shouldn't be. We really should actually define what we're trying to measure. Hey, what's the capacity of a person? What's the capacity of a team? Well, are we talking about throughput? Are we talking about what is their ability to get some work done? Is it their availability in terms of, hey, this guy's out of office and the team is throughput might suffer? So kind of setting the stage here for that dual unit of measure. What I'm going to do is actually flip over to target process now. Oh, apologies. Before I jump into target process, there's a couple of things to think about in terms of where it's being used. So you can see the capabilities on the left-hand side here. It's not just the Agile CLEs or the PMOs. It's really the resource management and workforce. It's roster management. Where are my people working? Who do I have working for me? Who is underneath me? Who am I supervising? Being able to understand what the team can actually accomplish. Start to measure and track the progress of work. Start using the capacity in order to start planning work, right? What can we actually accomplish? What can we do when?
Yeah,
And a lot of
and you actually, I was looking at some of the questions too. That you're actually getting ready to go on. What does a work or a team accomplishment, or what does the labor cost of this work look like? And these are things that target process is going to be able to show us.
Yes, it absolutely can, and you'll see a lot of that within the demo here shortly.
All right.
And really, when you see these questions on the right-hand side, if you have these questions, or if you hear your peers, your members, other people within the business start asking these questions, maybe your other customers ask these questions, you can start to think about something like target process or have a conversation around it in order to be able to track these. If you have these questions, then this demo is going to be very relevant to you, and hopefully we can show how target process can do these things as well. So now I'm actually going to go to the demo here, and I'm going to exit my screen share. And before I actually show the demo of target process, I kind of want to lay out the groundwork really briefly of what target process is, because when you'll see it, it just kind of has a nice UI. You'll be able to see a lot of these things, but understanding a little bit of the foundation of target process is going to be important. So what you're seeing here is not target process itself, it's just a mirror board with the data model, or at least a picture of a data model of target process. Really what it is, it's an object-oriented system that has by these colorful cards you see before you may not or may not be able to read it, the different aspects of it. And those objects have metadata associated to them. So things like ID, summary, title, description, plan start, plan end dates, just depending on the kind of object that we have. And you can see there's different modules. You have your work and plan. This is how you can track work within the system. There's budgeting aspects of it. So we look at how costs are being measured in different respects there as well. The people side of things. So this is where we're going to be focused on, is that optimized workforce up at the top right, and other aspects of it too. You have your strategy, you have your work, perhaps your enterprise architecture capabilities, goal management, capacity planning. We're going to look at that as well. You'll see things like work allocation, involvement, availability. We're going to take a look at timesheets, being able to track people's time, all in kind of one system. And really what makes this really tick is the connection point between objects. The relationship between each of these objects is what allows us to actually tell a story, not just from a data perspective where I can show you a bunch of data, a bunch of objects in front of me, but also be able to understand what is happening, what's going on, being able to provide a little bit of context when we start asking these questions of how much does this team cost? What can they accomplish? What can they actually do? What do I want them to be able to do? If I were to show you a connection points or connections between all of these objects, it'll just be a spiderweb diagram. You wouldn't be able to read anything from it. But as we get into the demo, you'll see some of those connection points in real time and actually happen. So let me switch over to target process itself. And this is what you're looking at. So on the left-hand side, you have what's called a view navigation panel. This is where I'm going to be navigating some of these things through different views. This is how you can expose some views within target process and expose a lot of those objects in here as well. In the middle is going to be your main view where you're going to be able to see those objects. In this case, I'm just showing a list view here. And then if I open one of these objects, you're going to see what's called a detailed view. It is the details of this object. You have your tabs up at the top, which can give you different pieces of information, different fields, depending on what you want to see. And on the right-hand side, you see a persistent set of fields as well. So you have your progress, states, and life cycle of, in this case, an initiative, my assignments of who's assigned to this, whether it's a team of teams, or any folks themselves. Things like your planned start and end dates are going to be here if you use any RAG, score prioritization in this case, so on and so forth. It can show a lot of data sort of all at the same time. As we're talking about dual capacity management, let's talk a little bit about how we've seen folks use target process in order to actually connect people together to the work itself. When we think about capacity management or we think about resource management, there's really two ways of being able to allocate people. You have your traditional PPM resource loading, which is where I take either a person or a team and I allocate them directly to work. It could be an initiative, it could be a waterfall project. It doesn't quite matter. I can do that as well. And then the second piece is my fixed capacity allocation. This is when we start to think about things like agile teams or long-lasting teams, or maybe something like a shared service teams, where I'm allocating a specific person to that team itself, and then that team goes through and executes on a backlog of work. Kanban, Scrum, doesn't quite matter what their way of operating is. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time in each just to be able to kind of view it from a planning perspective. As we're planning things, as we're forecasting folks working on different things, and to be able to understand truly what their capacity is, this is where we start. So what I'm showing in front of you is a list of initiatives that I have in my fake company. I need to implement SAP for HANA. I have my AI core model. Maybe I have an AI innovation initiative. And I'm actually allocating people and teams to this initiative. So we have our work allocation here. Here I have my team risk, mostly made up of Van Beek engineering vendor, perhaps doing some IAM type of activities, allocated at 90% from August 2023 through April 2024. Then I have Alexander Kite. I maybe have Shannon McKinsey, Billy Brown in here at 100%, 50% appropriately, also from August to April. Another set of examples, right, where I have my allocations with Walter Todd, Letitia, doing all sorts of different things on this initiative itself. And what is cool about this is once we start to understand a person's percentage and start and finish time, I can actually see what my allocated hours are for this person or for this team against that initiative. And if I have their rate, whether it's a team rate or a user rate, it could be actuals, it could be blended rate, we can actually start to calculate what that total allocated cost is going to be. And I can use this then in turn to, if I open up my initiative here and go to maybe a financial summary, I can start to take a look at what my proposed labor budget might be, right? A sum of all my labor costs within this initiative itself. This is pretty straightforward. I mean, this is what's been going on for decades and has been highly successful in terms of our traditional PPM resource loading. There's a whole lot more here, but for the sake of time, I am going to move on to the next piece. Fixed capacity allocation. As I mentioned, this is where you might see something like agile teams themselves. Who is working on an agile team? What are they doing? Same idea here, right? Instead of work allocations or allocating people to work, I actually have involvements where the person is involved in this team. So I have my fake Marzullo Consulting Team Delta in here, a set of folks, about 8 of them. All we have a percentage here as well. My plan start and plan finish. If I have a plan finish, then I might know when they might leave. It could be a contractor with a contract end date. And if I don't have a plan finish, that means that I'm basically saying that John, Shane, Piers, Roger, Oliver, Aiden, and Eugene, as far as I know, are going to be on this team for as far as the eye can see, but as they don't have an end date. They're just going to continue to be on the team unless something changes down the line, at which point I can put in a plan finish and say, Letitia was on this team from August to February. In a similar manner, and I'm not showing this on the screen here, but I know the plan start, plan finish. I know my percentage of Letitia. If I know Letitia's rate, I can calculate how much this involvement costs and therefore start to calculate what is my team rate for a given month or for a given time frame. In this picture here, I'm showing monthly costs, right? So from we have February, November, December, so on and so forth. It's not sorted quite well here, but I can start to do my calculations and I can start to see what my actual costs are against this team, depending on who I have. And then, as go ahead, Steve.
Nope, and I'm going to jump in here for a second. Hey, you know, I know we're going down the path here. We're getting towards the end of the day, but please, if we've got any questions, don't hesitate to put them in chat. Hey, and Maxim, I'd say, how does a solution like this work with other Apptio products in the TBM space?
This is a fantastic question. So we see a lot of this, especially from a labor financial management piece, actually become an input into the other Apptio products like Apptio One and the TBM space, right? If we're trying to understand the total cost of ownership, especially in the IT space, in the technology space, we need to understand what am I paying my people? How much are they going to cost? And then how much are these initiatives actually costing me, right? So this labor cost becomes an input into the full TCO model that we can then start to use against allocations. So very frequently, more often than not, actually, we see using the native integration between Target Process and Apptio One, we send this data, whether it's the budget costs, whether it's the involvements, whether it's the work allocations themselves. I have my initiatives. I send all of that data over to Apptio One, and I can start to churn that model over there to start answering some pretty serious questions, right? How much is this business unit costing me? How much is this business unit using of a certain application, for example? We start to pair that up with my infrastructure costs using something like Cloudability or Turbonomic together to understand those infrastructure and the variable cloud costs. We start to pull in maybe utilities, telephone, assets all together in order to be able to truly paint a picture of total cost of ownership, especially from a financial view there. And it's not only from sending data from Target Process to Apptio One. We can get things like bill rates and rates of folks and teams from Apptio One into the tool. And also frequently we see companies use things like Jira, Azure DevOps to bring in data like user stories, projects, initiatives into Target Process, things like strategy as well get kind of put in here. So you get this single pane of glass of all the view, where then our PMOs, our resource managers go into Target Process, make these updates, actually go through these work allocation pieces, the fixed capacity allocation, understanding who's on a team, right? Maybe a Scrum Master is sitting in here saying, hey, I'm a Scrum Master for Marzullo Consulting. These are the folks that I have on my team currently. This is what they're working on. Another way of looking at this for my teams here, along with the users that I have, if you can kind of see on the right-hand side, once I start to get a team rate, I can start to calculate things like my average cost per point, right? If I know my team rate, let's say my team costs $1 million per month, and they've completed 10 user stories off of their backlog, then those 10 user stories cost me $1 million for that month. And this is where things like this connection point to user stories and bugs and work allocations and whatnot can also come in, just to start see some of the flows there. Once I have these two things in the system, it's very important to note, again, right, I made sure to say when we talk about capacity, we need to define which capacity we're talking about. In here, I'm using hours, right? I am using 80% of Walter Todd's hours against this initiative. I am using Letitia Allen's 100% of her hours or availability, whether that's 40 hours a week, whether that's 20 hours a week if she's part-time, against this team. And so that becomes the measure, right? We haven't really talked a little bit of, we haven't talked quite yet about story points or estimates from that perspective. Once I have both of these in the system, right, whether it's your traditional PPM resource loading against maybe some waterfall projects, I have my modern ways of working and my agile teams in here. As Letitia Allen, maybe she's 50-50, or maybe myself, Max, I'm 50% on a waterfall project and 50% on an agile team. That's all in the system. And because we're using hours as that unit of measure, I can start to answer questions like team load. I can start asking questions or answering questions like, what is Max working on? A lot of times we see other systems either be agile or waterfall, and therefore don't really tell you the full story. Here in Target Process, this is where our total optimized workforce comes in. In this view here, I have my team, Team Baker, and they have a specific set of work allocations against set of initiatives, both waterfall, just against an initiatives. In this case, I think there's also some shared resources. And you can see they're only 34.26% utilized for 2 months, 40% utilized for the next month. So I actually have some availability for this team for them to be able to do some work. I can view this in terms of that work allocation, but I can also probably view this from the work that they're actually doing, and seeing a backlog list of stuff that they're working on. In a similar fashion, once we start to understand what they're working on and perhaps if they're over allocated or under allocated, depending on my initial plan and my forecast, I can start to view this in a roadmap view with my plan start and plan finish. So here's my teams on the left-hand side, my team Epsilon, Van Beek, Marzullo Consulting, Team Charlie, and my starts and end dates of my allocations against an initiative. And we can sort of move this forward and backwards as we need to, so that we have a broader picture of what they're doing, what they're working on. And then some other aspects of this as well, right? Work allocations per team, maybe some team availabilities, depending on what we're trying to look at and what we're trying to answer, kind of in this dashboard view where I can put multiple views in one dashboard here. I can then take that and be more granular with it. So now I have my people load. So here's Jacob Abbott, he's 50% allocated. Jasper is free for February 2024, and then 50% allocated for November and December. Obviously, I have this filtered. We can open up this filter and see everyone within the company. I think there's one customer that has about 70,000 users within the system, and they're able to actually view 70,000 different lines, and with filters for business units, for teams, for names, what have you, to be able to get a much more granular view and say, hey, Jasper is available. He's only working 50%, either 50% on a team or 50% against an initiative. And I can actually click this and load this up so that I can follow the data and trace that data back to what I think this was Jasper here is actually working on. And in this case, it's phase out SAP on-prem instance. I can continue to follow this path until I find out exactly, yep, here's my waterfall project. So Jasper is 50% allocated against this waterfall project in here. If you were also on an agile team, we would see that Jasper is also allocated, let's say 50% against this agile team. I'll go click through, and instead of a waterfall project, it'll be against a team itself, where it'll show maybe Marzullo Consulting, for example, that we've been showing here so far. Another way of looking at this, especially when we start to talk about hours, actually, before I move into the requested dashboard here, this is all great and fine. If this is my planned view of people against teams and planned view of people against work, I need to be able to look backwards and say, is this actually what they worked on? And there's two sort of thought processes here. The first, and I think the majority of folks out there are using timesheets. So we can actually capture people's timesheets, whether in a different system, integrate with that and bring that information in, or we've seen a lot of successful companies use Target Process as an actual timesheeting system to be able to enter in data in here. So you can see here's Jacob Abbott, added total hours of throughout the weeks. If I want to take a look at everyone's timesheets, if I have that ability or I'm granted that access to do so, I can take a look exactly at what's going on and who's working on what, essentially. I don't think I have anything for my timesheets. I can start to aggregate this data and start showing different reports, like my total daily hours per user. So if I can filter out from a user, that'll show up here. It doesn't seem to want to load. Unfortunately, the demo gods are real with us today. But the idea being, again, from a capacity and hours standpoint, I plan this person to be 50%, spend 20 hours on this initiative and 20 hours on this team. They'll go in and during that week, they'll submit their timesheets, and then I can use that actuals data kind of looking backwards to say, is this actually what they're working on? I thought it was going to be 50-50, but in reality, I'm spending 25% of my hours on this waterfall project and 75% of my time against an agile team. So maybe I need to shift my allocations a little bit, especially from a plan perspective in here using work allocations and involvements to truly ensure that I'm having kind of the correct data and that sort of aligning there, which then in turn will tell the project manager or the scrum master or the team themselves, hey, this is actually what they're working on. This is what their actual capacity is to be able to do work against this initiative, against this team. When we start to build that perspective and that view out, there might be a approval process associated with this, right? So this is, I'm showing here a resource requester dashboard where as I'm starting to build out an initiative, as I'm starting to build out a team, I might not know exactly who is working on that team, but I can sure as hell say, I know what I need. I know the kind of person or developer or job profile I need in order to accomplish this work, in order to be able to be on this team or to complete the work that this team is going to be doing. And so we can go through any kind of this approval process in here as well. And then finally, harking back a little bit to one thing that I mentioned where, hey, this is a great snapshot in time. This is everything that everyone is working on today. But I know in order to be competitive in the market, I need to start doing something about AI now. I mean, AI is kind of already here. So hopefully this was happening, 2 years ago or so. Maybe with quantum, hey, we know quantum is coming in. There might be the next disruptive technology coming in. I need to start preparing now in order to be able to be ready to bring that in. Because I have my workforce in target process, I have their job profiles, I have their rates, I have the stuff that they're working on, I can start to actually take a look at views like this, which shows me how many employees versus consultants do we have? How many joiners do I have last year versus this month? How many people are leaving? What's my attrition rate against this? And as I'm talking about attrition, what is my attrition per job skill and profile, right? We see a lot of development and cloud infrastructure here leaving. There might be a story behind this. What is going on? Why are so many people leaving? Or why is there so much attrition for those two job profiles? Do I need to start looking elsewhere? Do I need to start upskilling my existing resources in order to be better prepared for that initiative that's coming in 2, 3, 5 years?
Maxim, how quickly can you get what does the return on investment look like on a product like this? What does the return on investment look like? And the reason I said is we just had a session. Our last session was with Kube Cost, and everything is very dynamic, right, and shifting. And so within 24 hours, you can kind of get a return on an investment. What would it look like for target process?
So there's many different, I would say, vehicles for return on investment, and it depends on this a bit ironic. What is the definition or unit of measure we're trying to do? One quick one that especially was we're talking about timesheets and people submitting time. We're seeing a lot of people move away from manual timesheet entry and submission to a more automated cost model. And there are several great success stories and case studies, McGraw-Hill being one of them, that they actually deprecated the use of timesheets and put something like this in target process, and were able to immediately see the benefits of people freeing up time. Their developers are no longer spending an hour a day or an hour a week entering their time. They can use that time focused elsewhere, and so all of a sudden you can get that return on investment from free labor from that perspective. Another one is because you have all of these connection points and all of this data in one system, you can start to automate a lot of these things. And so that frees up maybe some financial folks or resource managers time from trying to build a bunch of Excels and PowerPoints and throwing things together super manually, and just have this on an automated cadence that then displays a view like this to be able to answer some sort of questions or answer any kind of decisions that might be coming in. Another way of taking a look at this view from a capacity perspective in terms of hours is something like this weekly hours per job profile, right? How many actual hours do I have available for each of these job profiles within any given week? And I can start to pair that depending on how you want to look at it. And the, kind of one of the reasons I don't have a good picture of these hours connected to work is that it's pretty bespoke to every customer. So how you want to be able to take a look at maybe, okay, here's a bunch of IT or maybe cybersecurity folks, right? I have 280 hours available based on the number of people, part-timers, full-timers. How do I take that bit of information and say, here's what is necessary in terms of my initiatives and the work that I have in order to accomplish that? I have 280 hours of available cybersecurity hours, but I'm taking a look at all of the initiatives that are in my stack, and I might need 300 hours per week in order to be able to accomplish this piece of work in a given time frame by the end of the month, or by the end of the quarter, or by the end of the year. And when I have that discrepancy, I can start to ask questions like, what do I need to do? Again, do I need to upskill? Do I need to start hiring more folks? Do I need to reach out to my partners and do some sort of staff augmentation for that piece? So far, we've been talking a lot about hours and capacity in terms of hours, and not a whole lot about story points. So this is where I want to take us next, is more around our ability to take a look at capacity from a throughput perspective. This is when we start talking about things like story points. Sometimes, especially around waterfall projects, we might be talking a little bit about hours in terms of throughput, but I'm going to focus here on just story points. As I start to take a look at my backlog refinement, I can start to take a look at my Epics features user stories. My user stories are pointed right here, the effort, total pieces of effort that go into this user story. I can sum all of these up and understand what is my total effort of this feature or of this Jira Epic some folks use. I can kind of start to compare that against my estimates, right? Still in terms of story points as a unit of measure here, and be able to adjust as necessary. Again, I can sum all of that up to give me what my total effort against an epic is, or against an initiative, and start to take a look at broadly, holistically, what is this total size? What is the effort of this piece of work at any given layer? And from there, especially if I start to take a look at some of these epics, let me go to UI and data manipulation. If I know that my effort here is 319 points, I can immediately start doing some quick back of the napkin calculations and say, how many teams will this take? If I have 3 teams that all have a velocity of 100 story points, it might take them a sprint each to be able to solve that. Or if I have one team that's has a velocity of 100 story points per sprint, it'll take them about 3 weeks and a little bit in order to be able to finish that. So using that quick back of the napkin calculation, I can start to use this data to be able to answer some of those questions of when will this work get done? How many teams do I need in order to be able to complete this work? If I start to take a look at some of my iteration planning, especially around my team iteration capacity here, let me see if I have a good example. Let's take Marzullo Consulting. We know things change, right? Teams are dynamic. As target process might be a point-in-time system where it shows you here's what the data is today. We know things change day to day. People leave teams, people join teams, people move teams around, new teams start to form. And so we want to be able to capture this information on a timeline cadence. And this is one of the ways that we can do that. So here are all my sprints against Marzullo Consulting, right? Maybe they're doing a Scrum in this case. and I can immediately put in what I think their capacity is. This capacity can come from their prior velocity, right? So we can take an average of what their prior velocity was and patch that for capacity. I might have some metric that calculates based on the number of people that I have, based on an estimate of how many story points a person can do. I can calculate what that capacity actually looks like. If I open up one of these sprints, I can start to load these sprints up with user stories. And if I sum up the effort against user stories, that is what's going to give me the full effort, the full piece of what is the load of this iteration. So you see for my first iteration here, it's 15 points. For my second one, it's 23, it's 29, it's 21. It's never quite exactly the same sprint to sprint, and we would expect that. But that can then start to tell me how much am I loading, and that therein drives team predictability of ability to get stuff done. If my capacity here is 30 and the effort loaded in is to 15, then I have a question, right? I start asking questions. Hey, I thought they were going to get done 30. I thought they were going to complete 30 story points. They actually only got done 15. Okay, they got better here. They got better here. All right, I'm probably on a good track, so I can continue to use 30 as my capacity measurement as long as nothing changes with the team dynamic and the team structure. However, if we are consistently, and this is what we see more often than not, if they are consistently estimating and loading up twice as much as they actually have been completing in the past, then there's something wrong. Then all of a sudden their predictability drops to 50%, and we know they're only going to get 50% of their stuff done. Promises are probably going to be broken. Deliveries aren't going to be made. My plant end dates for initiative or of items above a user story are going to start slipping. We're going to see that. And sometimes this data can tell you, hey, I just need to cut my team's capacity by 50%. They consistently plan 100 story points within a sprint, but they also consistently only complete 50 story points within the sprint. Okay, well, let's cut that and say they can only do 50. And now I'm starting to move things around and getting a much more predictable and accurate understanding of what that team can accomplish within the system. This is another view of the kind of the same way of what I just talked about, where we're talking about velocities. Here is my total velocity of all of my teams for a given program increment or for a given quarter, right? It's all the teams for that quarter. This is what their velocity is: 110, 361, 247, 208, 274. This is how much they got done in each of these sprints. You can see that it varies wildly. And again, we would expect a lot of variation here. But I can start to take things like averages, right? They consistently, I can use an average of 280 story points for my program for the set of teams that I have as a good metric, because that's sort of what they're doing. It might tell you other stories, right? So you can kind of see that this within this quarter, it got a little bit better and then sort of stabilized. And then the next one, they're just doing a whole lot of good work. There are some quarters that are really, really not bad. I want to know what's going on in here. Why didn't we get stuff done in this area? Maybe it's a new team that kind of got formed and then broken up. This helps us ask those right questions here as well. And then we can obviously use target process for your typical Scrum Kanban views, whether it's task by person, Kanban board, burn down, burn ups, start to understand what my capacity is from that perspective as well. So that's been more kind of story point in terms of capacity, right? And I hope that you now understand a little bit from each of these different areas. When we talk about hours capacity, how much capacity do I have of a job profile? Typically, this is your HR folks, PMOs. This is some executives who are saying, hey, we got to get all these initiatives done. Which ones can we accomplish? When can we accomplish based on my capacity that I have available? If you're doing things like block funding, or if you have things like platforms, being able to understand what the capacity is from an hours perspective to be able to get some of these things done, especially when we're talking about waterfall projects. That's one set of use cases that we went through. The second set of use cases is entirely different. Even though we call it capacity, it's all about team throughput. It's all about how much work can a team accomplish, how much work a team has, or maybe availability that a team has in order to be able to complete some work, which then rolls up to highest levels of the work item hierarchy, like initiatives and up to the executives and whoever else is looking at the set of work that needs to get accomplished, connected to the strategy again. They're also intertwined, right? I mean, at the very end, our lowest common denominator is a person, right? Our greatest asset are the people that are working. We're hiring really, really smart people to do really, really great things. And so being able to use their viewership, if you will, against teams, story points, user stories, tasks, versus allocation, hours, availability, job profiles. That is how we can start to answer a lot of these questions there. Steve, are there any questions, comments, anything that you would like to ask?
Not seeing any questions right now.
Yeah.
And you kind of answered too, right? How target process actually kind of works in the bigger kind of IT financial management story. You actually referenced working with cloudability, so it actually works in the FinOps story as well. What about oh, I was going towards IT financial management and less target process.
No,
Yeah.
but target, but I mean, it's an important aspect of it, right? A target process, when we're talking about strategic portfolio management, where we're talking about our optimized workforce, that is part of IT financial management, which is embedded and is necessary there.
Do you see customers buying this as a standalone product, or do you see it them purchasing it as the larger ITFM story?
It's both. So we've seen customers use it standalone, completely standalone, from a both financial perspective, as well as some, I wouldn't say IT financial management, it's more labor financial management, especially around use cases like deprecating timesheets in favor of an automated cost model. We have a customer that did that just in target process. And there's plenty of others that use target process as an additional extension of their IT financial management practice as well.
Yes.
And so if I go back briefly and I take a look at some of the questions that we posed initially here, right? How much work can a team accomplish? I think we've answered, we've taken a look at how target process can start showing data to be able to answer that. When will this work be done? We did a little bit back of the napkin calculation. Obviously, you can go much more granular and be way more rigorous with this than that with target process. Being able to see the planned start end dates, who's available, how much hours do we have to complete versus available, how much time are people spending on this initiative from both a hours perspective and actually people submitting timesheets and actuals against the initiative, or if I'm an agile team, being able to understand what is their breakdown of the team's work from a backlog perspective against that initiative. What is the labor cost of this work, right? As we mentioned before, if we have hours of capacity, we have people's rates, we can start to calculate either the labor cost of that allocation, which then is just a sum for labor cost of the initiative, or I can start to use that against the team rate and either do an automated cost model of team to work based on what they can accomplish in a given time frame, or we can continue to use timesheets there as well. How many people or teams will this take to accomplish? We've seen a couple of different views there. And then what skill set and how much of this skill set is required to complete this initiative, right? That was my list of work allocations. I might not have a named team or a named person, but I know I need the skill set in order to be able to accomplish that. A lot of the tech leaders start to take a look at that and break that down in order to be able to compare. Hey, these are all my requested skill sets that I have within the system. And here's all the available skill sets that I have today. Is there a mismatch? Do I need to start reaching out, hiring, retraining my existing folks, or reaching out to my partners?
So in the past, all this stuff would have been done in like an Excel spreadsheet.
Everything in Excel spreadsheets. We've seen like Franken Jiras where people try to extend Jira into something that it was not built for. Same with Azure DevOps, where they're trying to sort of collect this different views and collate it all together. Spreadsheets and PowerPoints, right? It was just screenshots and people updating things on a monthly or maybe even weekly basis. Trying to collect data from disparate systems and put it all together manually. That's what we've seen in the past.
Who would be some of the competitors that we would see or compete against in the space?
So a lot of times things like Jira Align is kind of mentioned as a competitor to Target Process, and it's really not. I would honestly say that Jira Align is not quite a competitor to Target Process because of this view, honestly, right? Target Process can have a more holistic, broad view, especially its connection to the IT financial management aspect, especially into the business aspect, right? We've had other customers that have actually started putting their business work into Target Process. Folks like an oil company started tracking projects like going out to the oil rig and exchanging bolts and nuts or upgrading some sort of planned maintenance. They started tracking that in Target Process itself.
Nice.
So that kind of combination, right, starts to give you that holistic view and that connection again to the financial management piece. That's why like it's different. We truly do think that it's a little bit different and provides more value than something like a Jira Line would, or like a Plan View as well.
Okay. What size company needs a solution like this?
We've seen everything from 5 users of just 5 people kind of working, doing their own day-to-day jobs, up to 70,000 users within the system. What's important is to be able to understand, based on this sort of holistic view and based on the set of use cases broken down from these 6 key strategic considerations, what are we trying to solve and what are we trying to do? Sometimes it doesn't make sense for a company to use something like Target Process uh, uh, for that specific use case. We have an analogy here. It's like taking a Ferrari out to a grocery store. It's you can do it. You can drive it down and you can grab your groceries and drive it back, but that might not necessarily be the appropriate solution. We come at it from a business outcomes, business perspective, hence the use cases that we're trying to accomplish. What is this actually going to give me from a business need rather than just a tool capability need? So for some, even small companies of 5 users, it totally makes sense for them and it works really, really well. And then for 70,000 user, multi-billion dollars in revenue type of companies see a lot of value out of Target Process too, and everything in between.
Okay. I guess before we wrap up, guys, you got a chance to add questions in chat. Please do. Any kind of final words, Maxim, around Target Process?
No, and I'll leave this as kind of my final piece here. Again, Target Process started as a work item management system, but has really truly grown more than that. It is kind of the heart and core of the IT financial management system. It's that additional input, being able to understand that this is not just a single view of work, a single view of workforce, understanding capacity, availability. It touches other areas of the organization like enterprise architecture, like financial management, right? The CFO, office of the CFO has to be a stakeholder in this. The CIO and the work that needs to get done, strategy, and being able to talk to someone like a chief strategy officer is going to be very important. And so because it touches all of these different aspects, it can't just be a small program level tool to solve something. It has to be an integrated enterprise-wide piece of software that answers really, really big questions or helps provide data against these really, really big questions.
Perfect. Okay, then with that said, then you know what? I think that's a wrap for all the sessions today. All the sessions are going to be available on demand on any of the topics that you might have missed. Please go go back and re-listen to these sessions on, kind of on demand. We do have a poll out there. Please fill out the poll. We're always looking for your feedback. Don't miss the chance to join us at office hours if you have any questions that actually come up at 2:30 Eastern today. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for attending. Stay inspired, and continue to look for TBM opportunities in the businesses that you have. Please go ahead and join the Tech Exchange community for future events, and then look forward to seeing you guys in Orlando in October. And with that, I think that's going to be a wrap.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.